So forgive me if I look down a little bit. I'm trying a new source here and trying to incorporate technology, and I don't know whether I like it or not, but we're going to give it a try today. So please bear with me as we work through this. I really want to start things off by just saying thank you to everybody for the opportunity to join you this week. My wife Joanne, who is with me this week, was able to come along. She teaches 5th grade, so throughout the year it's a tough time for her to get away, but we enjoy these summertime trips and able to get to see the country and visit with some great folks. And we're certainly enjoying our time here in Louisiana so far, and we'll be here the rest of the week. But like I said, it's certainly an honor to be here with you, and I bring you greetings from the National Rural Water Association. Before I get into too much detail, I just want to share a little bit about myself so you can understand who I am and where I come from and what makes me tick. I grew up in a little town on the Delmarva Peninsula, which on the eastern shore of Maryland, known as Centerville, Maryland. So it's about 2,700 people there when I was growing up. And your typical small town where everybody knows everybody, and whether you want to know their business or not, you do. But that's what goes on in small towns, as you all know. We have one water tower in our town, and just like everywhere else, Centerville was written up on top of it. But the big highlight of the year was at Christmas time, the big star was put on top of the water tower. So how many of you all are responsible for decorating your water towers at Christmas time? I know plenty of people in this room have to be. So, well, even if you're not admitting it, know that it means something to the kids in your community, and it's a sense of pride for your community. As I decided what I was going to do with the rest of my life, little did I ever think I'd be in the water and wastewater, business. I took a job as a small town manager in a town of about 500 people on Maryland's eastern shore, a little town called Cecilton. But believe it or not, that little town had its own water and wastewater system and all the challenges that you guys face on a daily basis. We actually shared our operator who ran both our water system and our wastewater system with a town about 5 miles away on the other side of the river that was in the same position that we were. So, we had to find ways to improvise and make things happen. And like I said, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I just wanted to let you know that I've been in your shoes before and know what each and every one of you face at different times. But the best thing that happened to me in this small community, or one of the best things that happened to me, was that's where I was exposed to the circuit riders that were coming around from Maryland Rural Water. And I was 26 years old as a town manager in this little town. Quite honestly, had no clue what I was doing, and I was relying on any help that I could get from anywhere. And the circuit riders really were instrumental in giving me advice, giving our operators advice, giving our mayor and council advice, and I really came to rely on them and see what the value that they brought to the system. About a year or so later, on to bigger and better things. I'd moved up to a town in Delaware, just across the state line, and we had 4,000 or 5,000 people. But more importantly, I graduated from one water tower to 2 water towers. So, in my mind, I was in the big time there. But the same type of thing happened, is that we had upgrades taking place there. My first week on the job, we were expanding our wastewater treatment plant to deal with new regulations this community was facing. And at the same time, the Delaware circuit riders were coming around, and fortunately, fortunately, a couple years later, I had the opportunity to join the state board, and that's where my rural water story, continued or started, and now it continues in another community I'd worked in for a couple of years, a little bit larger, and now with the conservation district. We do a lot of source water protection projects, as well as balance that relationship in our community between the point source issues that we have, as well as the non-point source community, and really try to focus on getting people to work together instead of the traditional way of the point sources pointing at the non-points and vice versa. And it's really turned out that we're able to focus on results. Much like you guys down here in Louisiana, you're feeling everything coming down the Mississippi and from other states that all come, right here to you. And many people look at you guys as, well, you own it now, so it's your issue to clean up. We feel the same way with a lot of the things that we're dealing with on the lower end of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and nitrogen and phosphorus and nutrient management plans related to that are the name of the game, and really the focus of a lot of things that we work on. But the reason why I wanted to share this story with you is just to let you know that even though we're 1,100 miles apart from Delaware to here, we have a lot in common. The small towns around here are similar to the small towns that I live in and grow up around and still live around today. And there's nothing more important than the work that people are doing in those small communities and the people that make up those small communities that we call home. That's what keeps this country going. And even though you're not told this enough, very little would be possible in each of these small communities around the country if it weren't for the jobs that you all are doing. Whether you're a circuit rider or an employee of Louisiana Rural Water, whether you're a system operator or system manager, or you're sitting on a board, you guys are doing the yeoman's work out there that make all things in rural America possible, because without water and sewer services, nothing would be happening in our town. So with that, I'd like to give each of you a round of applause for all of that. So thank you. Even though Pat had touched on a lot of the programs that are out there, I still want to touch on a few highlights from the National Rural Water Association. First, really over the last year, there's been a lot of leadership changes that have taken place, some of which we knew about that were coming, just for example, myself becoming in as president last September. But we have a new CEO that started last summer, Matt Holmes, as well as we have some other leadership positions that are about to be filled at our Duncan office in Duncan, Oklahoma, that are going to be filled by folks coming from state associations. And the reason why that's important is because there's going to be a strong understanding, presence, and knowledge of the people working for our national association that understand what happens at the state level, what it takes to make a good association, and what those system members need from around the respective states. We also have, leadership in place on the elected side. Besides myself, John O'Connell from New York is going to be our senior vice president, and right here from Louisiana, your very own Glenn Womack is the vice president of the National Rural Water Association. So that's something that this association should be very proud of. I know everybody associated with Louisiana Rural Water under Pat's leadership for the past 30 years. You guys have made this one of the, premier associations that National Rural Water has around the country. So keep up the great work, and thank you for everything that you've done there. At National Rural Water, we're going to continue to focus on our core programs that we've built our success on over the past couple of years. We touched upon the Circuit Rider program earlier. That's a program that's been around since 1980. 41 years now, and we're finalizing our contract with USDA right now, which will be another 5 years of the Circuit Rider program. And that puts 147 circuit riders around the country to provide services to small rural water systems that, quite frankly, just need a little helping hand every now and then. Something to get you over the hump that you're dealing with that particular day. And I don't need to stand up here and promote the value of that, because for each of you to be here in this room today, you know the value of a rural water circuit rider. Our wastewater tech program is going to be continuing. Not only is it going to be continuing, it's going to be expanding. So hopefully you'll be seeing an increased presence on that side of the coin. Also, our training programs. There's probably not a person in this room that at one point or another hasn't taken advantage of a training program offered by Louisiana Rural Water or National Rural Water, or even some of the neighboring states for that case. That has been something that we have, really put a lot of pride into. And I think even though we've learned some things over the last year and a half with the pandemic and how you can do things remotely, sure, you can do some training remotely, but nothing replaces that face-to-face, hands-on training, working side by side with people, and just seeing how things work and making sure that those get done. So continue to look for those opportunities to expand in the coming years as well. Our source water protection program, Pat talked about that a little bit and just the value it has on the environmental side of the shop. Many of you know when we first started adding the source water program about 20 years ago, brought a different mindset. You know, these were people focused on planning, thinking ahead, thinking outside of the box. The problem was they all had great ideas, but we never had money for them to implement a lot of the ideas and suggestions that were out there, which made their job even that much tougher and made it harder for communities to really accept and endorse a lot of the things that were being recommended. Well, I'm happy to report that in the 2018 Farm Bill, there is now substantial money through USDA and NRCS to make source water protection projects a priority, and there's money out there to help get those funded. So if you have some questions, make sure you're talking to your source water folks at Louisiana Rural Water, and they can certainly direct you in the right direction on how to move forward. The energy efficiency program has been around for the last 7 years. It's going to continue. That really started out as a 3 to 5 year pilot program by USDA, but because of the results that are happening around the country, but not only around the country, specifically here in Louisiana, that program has continued. We now have 25 states that are participating in the energy efficiency program. And since its inception back in 2014, systems have recognized savings of over $11 million annually. So if you want to play that out over 7 or 8 years, you're looking in the tune of $70 to $80 million worth of savings that rural water utilities have been able to recognize because of the energy efficiency programs that are happening around the country. And the reason why I wanted to bring some of these up is just to show you that there's a lot of value associated with rural water programs. And as Pat alluded to a few minutes ago, those are all available to you at no charge as a member of Louisiana Rural Water. So continue your support, take advantage of those programs. You'll see them pay dividends to your system, both immediate as well into the future. A couple of other things I want to touch upon before I do wrap up. The apprenticeship program that was talked about. This is a real issue. I'm sure everybody in the room has felt this in one way, shape, or another. People around you have retired. You're starting to think about retirement. People have left. Positions have been hard to fill, especially given the situation we're in right now. At a national level, we've recognized this for the last couple of years and have put together a 2-year apprenticeship program to put people back in the water and wastewater industry and back into the workforce. And as I talked about with the training program, it's a combination of on-the-job, hands-on training, as well as classroom training. We've had folks that have we graduated our first apprenticeship class in Delaware last month. And we had people who had gone through the apprenticeship program, passed all their licensing and certification exams without hesitation. We had some folks try to challenge the test by just reading the book for a few weeks beforehand. Didn't have nearly the results that the folks coming out of the apprenticeship program had, and are going to have to sit for those exams again because they weren't successful the first time around. But most importantly, not only were the apprentices able to complete and successfully complete the licensing exams and certifications, they all have jobs. And they're out in the field working side by side with each and every one of you, even today as we speak. So it's something that sees immediate results and really is the wave of the future. And just if you recognize that your system needs help or you're going to be needing help over the next couple of years, the time to start is yesterday, but no later than now. And I know Pat and his staff can give you all the information that you need on how to get that started. But it's an opportunity for each and every system out there that sees a need, and I encourage each and every one of you to take advantage of that. One of the things that Louisiana should probably be most proud of, and I'm not going to say this for a good reason, just simply because you've had to endure the disasters that have come along with it, but Louisiana, along with your neighbors here along the Gulf Coast, have been leaders in the National Emergency Response Program. And be very proud of what you've started, because it's starting to spread across the country. Not everybody has hurricanes or tornadoes like you'll experience down here, but wildfires, earthquakes, you name it, are happening all over the country. And what you've been able to accomplish down here in just showing people what you're made of and the pride that you have in not only responding but restoring your systems and restoring hope in your communities. You know, people see that around the country, and anybody who's been through that, and I know most of you have been through that in one way, shape, or form down here, really be proud of the example that you set in your leadership for your communities, but also for your colleagues around the country. You're making a difference where that, you know, comes from. Then lastly, I just want to talk about what we're doing in Washington, D.C. NRWA has a first-class legislative and regulatory advocacy program. Our D.C. staff builds and maintains relationships with legislators, along with a lot of support from you. When elected officials come out into your communities, you show them what's going on. You're real with them. Many of you join us in Washington, D.C. in February of each year during the Rural Water Rally. All of those things that you're doing, whether it's here at home, in Baton Rouge, or in Washington, D.C., make a big difference. It's important for you to continue to tell your story over and over again so people truly understand that it's a passion of yours and what it means to the survival and success of the communities that you live in. The regulatory front, we're doing the same thing. First-class staff, we've got a board committee that is dedicated to regulatory advocacy, making sure that when new regulations are coming out from EPA or your state agencies, that the small system perspective is represented and understood as those regulations are being developed. And then last but not least, on the legislative side, our Farm Bill. That's where most of the programs are founded and established for federal legislation. That's coming up again in 2022 and 2023. NRWA is starting on that now, and we're reaching out to state associations for your input on things that need to be changed within the current rules regarding your programs, or new ways that you think should be made available to help you in doing your job and providing services to our members. And then I just want to close with a couple of thoughts. And all of this is important. And we often ask ourselves, why is all this important? And it's really just to remember that without you, meaning the rural water staff, system operators, system managers, board members, rural Americas would not be as prosperous as it is today. Each of you are public health leaders in your community. You're relied on to provide clean, safe, and affordable drinking water to the people in your community. And that drinking water that you're providing is essential to a healthy life. You're the environmental stewards in your community. You're the front line on the environmental front. You know, whether it's your wastewater treatment plant discharge or cleaning up the water and treating it for drinking water standards, you're making sure that the environment around you is as clean and pristine as you can possibly make it. You rely on that not only for your livelihood, but the healthy living and livelihood of all the people in your community. And last but not least, you're the economic development drivers in your community as well. And I touched upon this before, and I can't say it enough, that without water and wastewater utilities in your community that are well run and providing affordable services, there would be no economic success in the communities in which we all live in. It's tied directly to the work that those businesses are doing, the products that they're producing, and it's also tied back to providing and making sure that there is a healthy and viable workforce and able to support those businesses in their community and give people jobs. So keep in mind, you know, public health, environment, and economic development, those are all three cornerstones in each of our communities, and it's not possible without the work that you're doing. And just to close, as you can see, there's a lot going on with NRWA, and NRWA is 100% focused on the work each of you are doing here in Louisiana and in your local communities. And I want to come back to that word community. You've heard me say that a lot over the last few minutes. As I shared earlier, it's a big part of who I am, and it's a big part of what rural water is all about. Nothing is possible without you. You're the unsung heroes in our communities across Louisiana and a shining example of what makes up rural water. On behalf of NRWA, I'd like to thank you for all that you do and for all the work you do for rural communities across America that we call home. Thank you, and I look forward to enjoying the rest of your conference.